Welcome to the most dynamic show in mortgage, banking, and real estate sales. In this business, you need to get things done and dominate. You need energy. Get ready for your dose of Big Skip energy. Alayna Gardner, welcome back to the Big Skip Energy Podcast.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be back.
Oh, well, we are excited to have you. So I appreciate you joining me this cool Friday morning for you up there in Philadelphia, or the Philadelphia area.
Yeah.
You know, what's been going on since the last time we had you on the show? It looks like you've been busy.
I've been busy. I got my AMP, I think, since the last time I was on the show.
Indeed.
I have done lots of things. I don't even remember what the last time I was on the show. So I'm like, it's a whirlwind. The Eagles won the Super Bowl. Go Birds. You brought up I was from Philly.
Glad they did. Yeah.
So
I am for casual Friday. I can show it.
That's fair.
Yeah, though.
That's very fair.
Yeah.
I watched the Super Bowl with a Packers fan. My aunt's from Appleton, Wisconsin.
Appleton, Wisconsin. I am familiar with Appleton, Wisconsin. So
I've been a few times. Yeah. But other than that, we started a title company. I don't think I talked about that on our last show.
Tell everybody a little bit about that. I'll give you a chance for a short, shameless plug here.
Short, shameless plug. SettleWise is the title company to offer LodeStar clients a seamless title experience when they are operating in states they're not familiar with. That's all. That's it. We don't want general title orders. We want LodeStar client orders, and we do have a free solution if you're on LendingPad or Encompass or Path, where you can get the LodeStar service for free with SettleWise fees.
Well, there you go.
Great little tool.
So, you know, because you're a returning guest, I guess I forgot to get you to do this. But for folks that don't know you, aren't familiar with you, just take a second, introduce yourself, tell everybody who you are, what you're all about.
Of course. I am the director of revenue at LodeStar, so I lead both the sales and the marketing team along with partnerships. LodeStar is a closing cost solution, so we provide fee quotes in your LOS or POS, sometimes in your CRM. It depends on how you use your technology. But other than that, I co-host a podcast called Lending Leaders, which Skip has given us the honor of being on before. And I also create content on LinkedIn. So I do a series every week on LinkedIn called Thirsty Thursday. I go to a lot of trade shows. So if you go to a lot of trade shows, or if you're going to a trade show, I will probably be there. Yep. And I definitely have a lot of strong feelings about trade shows and all the stuff that comes around those.
Well, I'm glad you do, because I just want to go ahead and let's just go ahead and bite the bullet. I want to talk to you about trade shows a little bit. All right?
Let's do it.
Okay.
That's where we met. We met at a...
We did. It was the Mid-Atlantic Mortgage Bankers.
Yes.
Yes. And I'm so glad that we did. But, okay, like you said, you're out there a bunch, okay? You go into these trade shows, you go into these events, these conferences, whatever the case may be, right? And as a side note, one of the things I'm working on is the reason I'm asking you this. I'm working on developing a metric to quantify the qualifiable. In other words, I'm trying to give companies, but whether it's, you guys or a mortgage banker, commercial, but whatever the case may be, give them something that they can essentially plug in a formula or plug figures in based off a formula, and it'll give them a score. And if the score is higher than X, then they know it's going to be worth sending people to. Yeah, because I find that's a big issue now, is that especially as business is tighter now, revenue's not just flowing around. You got to be a little bit more careful. People are starting to pull back a little bit on certain things. Now,
absolutely.
In your space, my space, that kind of thing, it's a little different. But institutionally, company-wide, that kind of thing, we're seeing a little bit of a contraction. And so I want to try and give everyone a way to actually say, instead of just going off, well, we've always gone to this show, or I'll think about going. You can actually define whether it's going to be worth it or not.
Absolutely.
And it's a work in progress. It's not anywhere close to ready yet. But I wanted to ask you, because you are out there, you're out there more than I am. And what is it that you look for both before you go to an event and afterward, so you can say, hey, look, this was
profitable.
Because, it's not cheap to go to these. And so you got to be sure you're getting bang for your buck. So Talk to me a little bit about that. What do you use as your kind of, internal metric?
So there's definitely a few different things you can use. So I think there are different purposes for almost every trade show. And I think that's important to recognize. So there are some shows that I send employees to that are learning opportunities for them to make them stronger employees, to make them
Mhm.
better. And I think that's where a lot of lenders might sit in, right? Is like, I need these people to learn things, to be knowledgeable about the industry, learn about new technology and all of that. So there's that value. And that's kind of almost goes into a training bucket, right? Of, okay, well, what are we investing into our team for training this year? From a sales and marketing perspective, those are very different. And so brand recognition, of course, is important, right?
Sure.
But there's a limit to the amount of brand recognition you really need to do. I think there are a lot of vendors out there that continually do this brand recognition. One, because if you're a certain size company, you have to do them because you need to be showing that you're involved and you care about the industry. And if you
Right.
keep all that money for yourself, people are going to feel some sort of way.
Mm.
Sponsor that happy hour. Sometimes it makes people like you.
Yeah,
But for us, a huge part of what I track is obviously leads coming out of a show.
for sure.
But leads can mean very different things, right? So I like to give myself about 6 months post show to actually gauge whether or not a show was worth it. Because you don't know what's actually going to come through. Because a lot of times when people come back from a show, they might not respond to you for about a month because a lot of times people get bogged down by work and don't have time for you. And they've also had the same conversation with 10 other vendors, right? Or with 10 other people. Especially like if you're on the wholesale side, I feel like you're in a very similar position to vendors where you're having a lot of conversations. They might be looking at a bunch of different lenders,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. I
And
mean, it's-
reviewing a bunch of different products, right? You have to give them that time. So if you're trying to see immediate results, you're not giving yourself the time that you need.
Mhm. Completely.
The other thing is you really have to account for deal size. It's so important. And a touch point on one deal might be worth almost nothing, right?
Mhm.
But a touch point on a larger deal can be worth a lot.
Yeah.
So there's definitely, we're trying out a few different things this year. We have pulled out of shows in the past. If we don't see any real leads, I've had some hard conversations with some show partners and said, like, it's just not worth it for us to attend. It's not the right clientele and all of that. And you have to figure out where your leads are, right? And that's going to be different for every single business.
Yeah.
For us, user groups are our favorite place to be,
Yeah.
right? But that's not going to be true for a lot of people because you don't need operations leaders. You might need a sales leader or something along those lines. So it really depends on who you're looking for. And you really should look at what the courses are structured at.
Mhm.
When I'm looking at a show for the first time, if I haven't been there before, one, I ask colleagues, I'm like, hey, how's this show? Is it worth going to? Have you gotten business? But you have to find people that are getting very similar people to sign contracts, right?
Yeah. It's tough. It's a balancing act. And, to play devil's advocate too, there's also the flip side of it that, you know, most events are only going to be as fruitful as you make them to a degree.
Correct.
Now, like you said, there are certain ones after going, I know that for whatever reason, the format, just not for me. Either my customers aren't there or they don't allow enough time for even basic networking. If I'm exhibiting,
Yep.
I'll give the exhibitors a spot or dedicated time to go out there. And those are things that, in addition to my personal efforts, I expect from the events, right? So
Yeah,
I
100%.
think that's good. Is there anything in particular that you look for that says, hey, look, this is just not going to be worth my time? Leads aside, say, hey, is there something that you see that you're like, it's just an automatic? Nah, I can't do that.
We really struggle in single state MBAs for
There
us.
you go.
It's just,
That's good that you know that, though.
it's tough for us because so much of our business model, we provide fee disclosures
Yeah.
across states. But if you're a lender doing state business in one state, you probably don't need us, right? And there are a few states that are exceptions, New York, Maryland, whatever, right? But for the vast majority, that's just not valuable for them. So it makes it really tough for us to really get what we need out of them.
Yeah.
Now, we do go to single state MBAs, for example. I've gone to a few because I've been asked to speak. And then it becomes valuable in a different way, right?
It's a different-
Exposure
It's
and
a
all of
different
that.
bag of rocks, though.
But if you're just going to attend as a salesperson, it's almost impossible for us. We do get involved with our local MBAs. We go to some of those events because they're close, they're within driving distance, but I'm not getting on a plane for any of it.
Yeah, for sure. I get that. So let's take it a step further. Let's talk a little bit about networking.
Yeah.
So for you personally, when you're out there, what are some of the things that, if you meet somebody new,
Mhm.
what's your mental checklist consist of to be sure that you make the most out of that new connection? Or it could be a repeat connection, but let's just keep it
Yeah.
simple. Let's say you meet somebody brand new that you think may be a valuable addition to your network and vice versa.
Yeah. I think there's a delicate balance between doing your job as a salesperson and being a human being.
Mhm.
I think that's important to highlight because there are definitely going
I
to have
could push back and say that being a human being makes you a good salesperson.
it
But
does 100%. Never talk about yourself, right?
Mhm.
Unless asked. I think that's a huge piece for me is if you ask people about themselves, they'll give you a lot of information very quickly and you
Mhm.
can kind of figure out. And sometimes I have really good connections with people that may never give me business directly, but having that connection may lead me to something that I need in the future, right?
Mhm.
I think, you're a great example of this. I'll use you, right? We were across the hall from each other,
Yeah.
right? As exhibitors, I don't think we've ever actually traditionally done business together, right?
Well, you
I
actually
sponsored, I think, something for you.
well, no, so when I was still in wholesale, my company, parent company
Used us.
started using y'all. Yeah.
Yeah.
Before that,
But like,
I was trying to displace my current provider with you, but they closed down before I could do it. So,
it happens. But I think that's important to note as well, is just having a well-rounded network is important. And I think it's important to note what type of show you're at. There are shows, I'll use the upcoming ICE Experience show as an example. That is kind of our Super Bowl of the year. I will get
Okay.
the most amount of leads I will get at that show all year.
Mhm.
It won't be close. If you're not a prospect, I'm not talking to you.
Yeah.
Like, if you don't have business to give me, I don't have the time to give you at that show.
Mhm.
There are a few close partners that I'll touch base with because there are a few folks that come out of the woodwork for that show that I don't get to see at other shows, so I'll make time for them.
Mhm.
But my job at that show isn't to work on partnerships or industry relationships or anything like that. That's what my wide variety of other shows is for,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And in those moments, really what I'm looking for, and honestly, at that show, people self-select pretty quickly.
Mhm.
They ask you, they're like, "Hey, what do you do? What side?" All of that. So that's also important, is knowing the industry and knowing what every section does is one
Yeah.
of the most important
Which
thing you can
is
do as a salesperson.
Yeah, which you would think it would be a foregone conclusion, but there's a lot of folks that don't know what everybody else, what their job even entails. So, but going back to kind of your mental checklist, what are some, obviously making it about the other person, that's huge. But what are some like go-to questions that you always are sure that you ask? Because, you have obviously you're out there, you have your criteria that make somebody move from your network bucket to your prospect bucket.
100%, yes.
Yeah. And so, if you're like me and, and I think you are, there
Yep.
are specific things that you ask to see if I need to say, okay, I'm going to need to pursue this further after the show, or,
Mm.
hey, I'm going to keep them in my network bucket, not move them over into my,
Not move 'em up. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I think one of the best things I do for me is kind of there becomes this natural point in the conversation where everyone tells everybody else what they do,
Yeah.
right? Because everyone knows they're there for work. I like to say, like, yes, we're a fee provider,
Mm.
but most people know our competitors better than they understand the word fee provider.
Yeah.
So I won't say it on the podcast because I don't want to slander or anything like that, but I say we're blank's replacement, right?
Mhm.
In those types of situations. And a lot of times, if they know what that is, they are a prospect,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That's it, right? And a lot of times, as soon as I say that, their ears perk up and they're like,
Mhm.
okay, well, let's talk. We should talk, have a conversation and all of that.
Mhm.
Because it's a lot of times I make a connection at a happy hour or something like that. And if it's Monday or Tuesday, the beginning of a show, we'll meet before the show's over, right?
Yeah,
We'll have
for
a
sure.
conversation, we'll catch each
Yeah. There's
other
enough time.
if there's enough time.
Mhm.
But if not, I'll send the follow-up email and we'll schedule a meeting or a demo or anything like that.
What are your feelings about pre-show reach out to now? Obviously, we don't always get the attendee lists, especially if you're just attending. If you pay enough money, they'll give you anything. But how do you feel about trying to set up appointments before you show up? Because I've got mixed feelings about it. I'm kind of curious to see where you stand on it.
I think it's tough. I
Yeah.
think it's very tough. I have heard of some vendors that require salespeople to have a certain number of
Yeah.
meetings scheduled before they can go to a show. I think that's very short-sighted.
Indeed.
I mean,
So
they can keep
you
doing it
picked
because
up
more
where I was
space
going
for
with that.
me.
All right.
It's really tough because lenders get there's no other way to put it other than harassed,
Mhm.
right? Like, I actually warned some of my
Yeah, but they
lender
get
friends
bombarded from every angle for everything, constantly.
for everything, all the
But,
time.
hey, you know what? That's business, though.
It is. But when you have, this wonderful upcoming show, right? There's over 100 vendors attending and sponsoring,
Mhm.
right? That all want your time. And a lot of vendors, and this is, I think, where I get frustrated with pre-show reach outs, is if you are a vendor and you are not cleaning your lists, you're doing all of us a disservice.
You transitioned this for me. I was gonna lead you to it eventually.
No, they have to. If you are a vendor and you are not cleaning your list, you should be getting other vendors off there. I don't want to see every time I see a vendor email in my inbox, I'm like, you didn't do any work. You didn't even take a second. You should be taking out titles that don't apply to you. I pull servicing folks and
Mhm.
secondary folks off my lists because they don't have anything to do with me and they don't need my email,
Yeah.
right? And as vendors,
But
every time that you do that, you damage open rates for every vendor for
yeah.
the entire show.
Well, it's actually funny you say that because it's also yeah, and this has been a discussion at a couple of different sales conferences that I'm involved in too. With the advent of AI and how it generates a lot of these emails for you, you've got sometimes, and this is not an exaggeration, you could have 20 different vendors sending the exact same email. And God help you if you open up one of them, because then that's gonna ping the AI to keep going. Then, baby,
And also, like, use real terms. Don't use business
use real
buzzwords.
language, humanize it. Let's work on humanizing this whole thing.
If I see one more email that's like, increase profitability, drive down production costs, I'm
Yeah.
like, yes, that's great. But like, how? How are
Yeah,
you
well,
doing that?
well, if you want to know how, you have to respond to the email. No,
Well, I won't
well,
because I don't know if I need it.
too much email now has got it's fluff, it's buzzwords, it's like all the terms that people make fun of, all the business cliches. I mean, if you go on Instagram and find like the consultant like memes pages with all the ridiculous buzzwords floating around, that's what these messages consist of. They provide you with nothing. And it's fluff, and like you said, a lot of times they're going to the wrong people. But this leads me back to, and we'll keep talking about this. This leads me back to,
My soapbox.
well, yeah, the event, the networking piece of it, before show reach outs, or really after show. You've got to maintain your database. You have
Oh
to.
my
You got
gosh.
to be sure you put
Yes.
people in the right spot. I got from a Mortgage Bankers Association, and I won't name which one. I got the distribution list for its affiliates, so vendors like me,
Yeah.
its member, its LOs, and I open up the spreadsheet, all right, and I look at it. I can see 6 people, and this is within 10 seconds. 6 people that I know are retired, 2 that I hate to say this, 2 they're dead. And of the affiliates, there were at least 4 or 5 that I knew did not work there anymore.
Yeah.
And it's like, but this is the association. This is not even a salesperson. So I was like,
Yeah.
you're supposed to have these things up that you've got to scrub your database, people. You have to. It wastes time and money. And also, it's a terrible impression.
It is. And I get it. It's tough, right? Like, as there is a lot of old school minded sales leaders out there that say you have to have X number of emails out before a show because that's what works. But
Is it?
I mean, this industry is relationships. So,
Yeah, well, I mean, that's sales in general. That's interesting. I'm sorry to interrupt you. So I was at Outbound. It's a sales conference out in Texas at the end of last year. And one of the ladies, I can't remember the company she worked for, is a major company, though. It wasn't like a small timer. It's Fortune 500 for sure. She stood up and said, we were talking about email, right? And she said, we actually do not allow our sales teams to use email for any type of prospecting or solicitation purposes.
I mean, fair.
Yeah, so that forces them to use other means. She said, I would rather have them sending a piece of snail mail than an email out.
I will say, if a mortgage lender sent me, like a mortgage vendor sent me a piece of mail, I'd be terrified. I'd be like, how did you get my address?
Well, yeah, but
I get what you're saying.
Yeah, you follow what I'm saying. Obviously, the telephone is the primary way that they.
Yeah.
Yeah, but just so, and a couple more folks in there raised their hand. They said, we do the same thing. We just don't allow it because it's a turnoff. It's it's a time sucker. And you're going to have plenty of people that push back. Oh, no, it works. I do this. I got my biggest account through email. Yeah. Okay.
Occasionally it works. You're right.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
in
blind
general,
squirrel finds the nut every now and then. So.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing that a lot of people are holding on to because it is so low energy.
Yeah.
Right. It's easy. And don't get me wrong. We do send a couple pre-show emails. We send exactly 2. We send one, which is a know before you go that comes from our marketing email.
Yeah, that's not an active prospect email, though. That's not.
It's not a prospect email. It's like,
that's an FYI.
This is an FYI. You're going to be at the show. We're going to be at the show. We don't even make it about us. You ever open a LodeStar marketing email? We don't talk about closing costs almost ever. There's a comic strip in there. We link to other people's websites. Like, we'll give you, if you get a pre-show email from us, it's legitimately like, here's the weather. Here's some restaurants we like. Like, and if you want to meet with us, here's a link. Right. Yeah. And I think we saw when we pulled away from sending sales emails, we saw our open rates go up. I see people at shows. I was in my AMP class and I saw someone had my newsletter open behind me and said, this is a piece of content I read every week. Right. There's no amount of money in the world that I'm going to turn that away from. It just doesn't make sense. I can destroy my reputation by spamming emails, or I can build reputation by providing value.
Or you can destroy it by different means altogether. No.
I have options, right?
No, but I mean, that's the thing. Database management is one of the biggest tools that LOs need to utilize now, especially more than ever. It's the lowest hanging fruit. People who have been to my trainings know I talk about this all the time. You have got a database there chock full of information, potential referrals, repeat clients, etc. But you got to maintain it. You don't want, and this happened. You don't want to send something to a borrower that you haven't reached out to in 3 years just to have their son or daughter reply back, hey, I take care of my dad's email now because he has Alzheimer's and is in a home. Oh, I'm sorry. Whereas if you kept up with it, you probably would have known about that major transition of life, right? It's the same thing on a B2B level. You got to keep up with it, right? So now you've got a post coming up on LinkedIn that you're gonna drop.
Yes,
today.
I did pick one of the unlucky. One of the vendors that emailed me got unlucky. Their email was generic enough.
You copy and paste.
Oh, I just blacked out the email and I'm posting the whole thing.
Isn't that terrible though? That speaks to just how shitty that email was.
You can't tell what the company is at all. I had someone else look at it. I was like, can you tell who this is? Because I have the email domain covered and they're like, I have no idea. I don't even know what they do. They're like, you can tell they're on the servicing side, but other than that's it.
Oh, goodness gracious. I love it.
And
I love it.
It's just, why send the email at that point?
Yeah. Like,
there's no purpose.
Bother him. Like you're not building familiarity. If anything, you're aggravating. And
I have so many lenders that, especially, this is the one show a year we do like a big booth at.
Yeah.
And like, we have a lot of lenders that'll show up at the Monday night happy hour and be like, you were on my list to meet. I just didn't open any of my emails because I got so many.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
yeah, it gets to a point where you're just like delete, or ignore.
Yeah, because you're tired.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. All right. So some big takeaways, obviously.
Just lightly bullying all the vendors in the room. It's fine.
Well, considering you and I are both vendors now, it's
Someone has to, right? We have to call out our own.
That's right. Somebody's got to say it. So before we end, what else do you want to talk about? What else do you want to share with the listeners?
Oh, I have no idea.
Yeah.
I didn't think this through. Talk about LinkedIn content, or let me think of what else. Honestly, I've been working a lot. My role has changed a lot in the last
Mm-hmm.
year. I've rounded out my team, brought on some new folks, and I think
Yeah.
it's something that's definitely challenging, I think, for leaders in kind of that we're not a startup, but
Right.
like we are a small business,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So every
You've got a
time,
very small team. So,
yeah. So as I feel like I'm finally getting into more and more of the true director level work.
mm-hmm.
And I feel like it definitely makes a huge I really benefited from taking a step back last week
Good.
because it really pulled me out of the day to day. And I think
Yeah.
that's something that a lot of leaders fall into that trap
Mm-hmm.
of, well, I'm just in the day to day because I have to be, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you can't really lead from within, right? You have to lead from the front.
Yep. Yep. You can't be stuck back trying to like look over everybody. What's going on? You know.
Yeah.
Well, now you mentioned LinkedIn posts. I mean, obviously, I know we just got done talking about one, but was there something in particular that popped in your head for that?
I think there's definitely there's LinkedIn is definitely, I think, a really tough space for a lot of people.
Mhm.
And I would encourage anyone, I would love to see more diverse voices on LinkedIn,
Mm-hmm.
personally.
Yeah.
I think a lot of especially in mortgage, and this is just across the industry, right? It's not even just
Mm-hmm.
LinkedIn influencers. I'd like to see more people of color and minorities and women kind of taking up that mantle and
Mm-hmm.
talking, because I think there is that hesitation and that fear a little bit because it does feel
Well,
like a
it's
professional
also a
career.
numbers thing, you know. I mean,
Mhm.
if you look at it, I mean, we're still dominated. You know,
We 100% are.
the industry is still dominated by white folks. You know, the number of women has increased significantly. But if you go on LinkedIn
Mhm.
and look up some of the most active, for lack of a better term, loudest voices in the mortgage industry, they're middle-aged white men. You know, not saying that their content's wrong or bad. That's not the point.
No.
But yeah, it would be good to see a little bit more points of view.
Yeah, and I think it's something that we focus a lot on when we create the podcast and when we curate
Yeah.
guests. We really do try and find those diverse voices. And it's not easy, right? I
No, it's
think
not.
that's
You know
something.
what would be really cool? And I don't think this will ever happen. Is if we found so like if we found somebody in the mortgage business who wasn't an executive, wasn't a
Mm,
C-suite person, wasn't a salesperson, somebody like and not that I'm picking on this, maybe like a loan closer or a loan
mhm.
processor that just got a wild hair and said, you know what? I'm gonna start generating some content from our point of view
100%, yeah.
because that'll be you know what. So I'm rereading a book I read years ago. So this is getting way off topic here. This is this is I don't know if you can see this, a people's
Oh.
history of the United States.
Yes.
All right. So it's an old book. It's been around for a long time. And what it is that, you know, basically we always see and always learn about history from the top perspective. And this takes a different look at it from more of the everyday person's perspective. I'd be really interested to hear content from those different points of view, you know, in our
Mhm.
industry. That'd be cool. I mean, and so, yeah, when we say diversity, we automatically go to race and gender, right? But it didn't just have to be that. It can be
Roles are a huge
position.
thing
Yeah,
too.
roles are huge. Roles are huge because it's an entirely different perspective. I'd love to see that.
Yeah, that's definitely something I always if you're ever at a show with me and you're an ops person and you wanna record some content and just dabble, I will immediately drop everything and film with you
Same,
and make you
same.
comfortable on
I'll
camera.
make that commitment right now. And hell, Alayna, you
Um,
know, if we're at the same show, we'll do it together.
we'll do it together. Yeah,
So,
I love anytime I can get someone who was shy behind a camera to show up for an interview. I know I've won because those people often have some of the best insights that I've
yeah,
ever heard. I always like to say I'm most likely not the smartest person in the room.
but you can
And I
say if you
love
are, then you're in the wrong room.
exactly.
Mhm.
And I really enjoy getting to get those people who may not normally be on camera and get their unique perspective
Mm,
because very often they have some wonderful takes.
yeah.
And that's actually what I'm trying to do this year on LinkedIn. So that's my new kind of series. I did a little bit of IMB this year, so I posted like same day content
Yeah. Yeah.
reacting to sessions. I'm going to try it out in a few different ways. I might space out the content a little bit more. I'll post some next week. I don't know when this is going out. The
No
Housing
problem.
Wire Economic Summit. So depending on what day of the week this comes out, I will probably have some content either coming or just posted from Housing Wire Economic Summit. So that's something I'm going to be doing at trade shows this year, is trying to find some of those more the quiet voices and pulling them out in front of the camera.
Yeah, I think that's great. I love that. Yeah, and this will come out Monday, by the way.
Oh,
Normally I do
perfect.
Tuesday, but I've had a 2-week break, so I'm gonna go ahead and get it out on Monday.
Awesome. Well, Housing Wire is on Wednesday, so if
Yeah,
you
so
look on my page
it'll
on
be a
Wednesday, it'll be
precursor.
there.
That's right.
Fly to Texas.
Well, Alayna, for those that may want to get in touch with you, learn more about you, where should they go? What should they do?
Absolutely. You can find me on LinkedIn. It's where I'm most active, Alayna Gardner. If you do want to email me for some unbeknownst reason, it's agardner@lssoftwaresolutions.com. It's very long. And yeah, that's really it. But yeah, LinkedIn's the best place to find me. I respond to most of my messages in a semi-timely manner, is what I like to say. Sometimes I get a lot and then I get a little buried. But yeah.
Very cool. Well, listen, I appreciate you coming on, sharing some thoughts with everybody today, and looking forward to seeing you on the circuit.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Skip.